In 2007, a man named Carl Wolf sat in front of a panel of journalists at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., and said something that, if true, would change everything we think we know about the moon. Wolf was not a fringe figure. He had served in the United States Air Force at Langley Air Force Base in the mid-1960s, holding a confirmed cryptographic security clearance, working in a tactical photo reconnaissance unit that processed classified imagery. His military record is documented. His clearance level is documented. His role placed him in proximity to NASA's Lunar Orbiter program in the months before the first Apollo landings. Wolf testified on camera that during a visit to a NASA facility in 1965, a colleague showed him a photograph of the far side of the moon. The photograph, he said, contained structures, towers, geometric formations, things that did not belong on a dead, airless world. Then the colleague said something Wolf never forgot. "We're not supposed to be talking about this." Wolf died in 2014. He never produced the photograph. He never named the colleague. He never deviated from his account in nearly 50 years of telling it. He is one of dozens of named individuals, many with verifiable government or aerospace credentials, who have claimed on the record that there is something on the moon we have not been told about. Tonight, we are going to take that claim seriously. We are going to walk through the evidence, the famous cases, the debunked claims, the unresolved questions, and the data we now have from the most intensive period of lunar exploration in human history. We are going to ask honestly, are there alien bases on the moon? And we are going to answer. There are two failure modes in how this question is usually answered. The first is credulous repetition. Stories are recycled. Claims are amplified. Hoaxes are presented as evidence. Photographs are shown without context. The same 5 anecdotes circulate for decades, growing in detail with each retelling. This approach treats every claim as equally weighted, and it produces the impression that the case for alien activity on the moon is overwhelming, when in fact most of the evidence collapses on examination. The second is dismissive debunking. The entire topic is treated as embarrassing. Anyone who raises the question is presumed credulous. Evidence is not examined because the conclusion is presumed in advance. This approach feels rigorous, but is actually lazy because it refuses to engage with the parts of the topic that genuinely remain unresolved. Both approaches fail the audience. This video will do something different. It will name the famous claims. It will examine them on their merits. It will identify which are debunked, which are unverified, and which point toward genuine unresolved questions in lunar science. By the end, we will arrive at the position that the actual evidence supports. That position will be neither what believers want to hear, nor what skeptics want to hear. It will be something more interesting than either. Let us begin with the most famous image. In November 1966, NASA's Lunar Orbiter 2 spacecraft photographed a region of the Sea of Tranquility from approximately 46 kilometers above the lunar surface. Frame number L02-61H3 was released publicly the following year. In February 1967, a Boeing engineer named William Blair, who at the time worked at the Boeing Institute of Biotechnology, examined the frame and noticed something unusual. The frame contained 7 elongated objects casting dramatic shadows. The shadows were long, geometric, and arranged in what Blair argued was a non-random pattern. Plotted on a coordinate grid, he claimed, the objects formed 2 triangles. He suggested the formation was statistically inconsistent with random distribution of natural objects. The objects were named the Blair cuspids. For decades, the cuspids were cited as the strongest single piece of photographic evidence for artificial structures on the moon. The claim appeared in books, documentaries, and articles from the late 1960s through the early 2000s. In 2002, a comprehensive reanalysis was conducted using digital photogrammetry tools unavailable to Blair. The reanalysis examined the original photograph at higher resolution with three-dimensional shadow reconstruction. The findings were unambiguous. The objects were natural boulders. They cast long shadows because the photograph was taken at a low sun angle, specifically 11 degrees above the horizon. At that angle, even small irregularities in surface terrain produce shadows many times longer than the objects themselves. The apparent geometric arrangement was an artifact of the projection of three-dimensional terrain onto a two-dimensional image. This is established. The Blair cuspids are not artificial. But notice what we have just done. We have walked through the most famous lunar alien structure claim of the 20th century, and we have set it aside. That should make you trust the rest of this video more, not less. We are not here to confirm a thesis. We are here to find out what the evidence supports. The next claim is harder. In July 1965, the Soviet Union's Zond 3 spacecraft photographed the far side of the moon during a lunar flyby. The mission was, by Cold War standards, a major intelligence event. The Soviet Union had imaged territory the United States had not yet photographed at comparable resolution. Among the images returned was a frame showing what some analysts described as an obelisk-like structure, casting a long shadow across the lunar surface. The Soviet Academy of Sciences referenced the image in technical publications between 1968 and 1970, including in the journal Technika Molodezhi and in subsequent Academy reports. The story spread. By the early 1970s, the Zond 3 spire was cited as evidence that the far side of the moon contained structures the United States was unwilling or unable to acknowledge. Here is where the analytical reasoning becomes important. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, two adversarial intelligence apparatuses examined the same lunar imagery. The Soviet Union had every conceivable strategic incentive to announce, prove, or weaponize evidence of artificial structures on the moon. The United States had every conceivable strategic incentive to confirm or deny such evidence in response. Both independently concluded that the Zond 3 object was a natural feature, specifically a tall mountain peak casting a shadow at a low sun angle, similar in character to the explanation later applied to the Blair cuspids. This is a general principle worth holding on to. When two parties with strong incentives to disagree examine the same evidence and arrive at the same conclusion, that conclusion is unusually robust. It is among the strongest forms of evidence available in any domain. The Zond 3 spire is, by this standard, not an artificial structure. But notice again what is happening. We are dispatching the famous claims. The believer-leaning viewer may be feeling at this point that the case is being dismantled. I want to ask for your patience. There is a reason we are doing this. The famous claims are not where the real question lives. We have to clear them out before we can see what is actually unresolved. That part is coming. The Apollo program is the source of more alien on the moon claims than any other event in human history. Some are extensively documented. Some are based on misheard transmissions. Some are outright fabrications. I want to walk through two of the most famous. The first is the Armstrong warning. A widely circulated story holds that Neil Armstrong, at a NASA function years after Apollo 11, told a colleague that the astronauts had been warned away by an extraterrestrial presence on the moon and instructed not to return. The quote is traceable. It first appears in the work of Otto Binder, a science writer in the early 1970s. It is then amplified by Dr. Vladimir Ajhaja, a Soviet physicist in the late 1970s. It is then repeated by Dr. Maurice Chatelain, a former NASA communications engineer, in his 1979 book. When the quote is traced to primary sources, it appears in no contemporaneous document. Armstrong himself, until his death in 2012, never confirmed any part of the story. His family, asked directly, has consistently stated he never made such a claim. Armstrong was, by all accounts, an extremely private man who disliked giving interviews. His silence on alien topics is not evidence he was hiding something. It is evidence he was who he appeared to be, a careful engineer who said what he meant. The Armstrong warning quote is not verifiable. The attribution chain is third-hand at best, and the primary subject denied it for the remainder of his life. The second is Apollo 20. In 2007, a series of videos appeared on YouTube purporting to show footage from a secret 1976 Apollo 20 mission. The footage allegedly showed a cigar-shaped extraterrestrial vessel on the lunar surface embedded in a crater on the far side. The uploader, who used the pseudonym Retired AFB, claimed to be a former astronaut named William Rutledge. The footage was, in subsequent years, identified definitively as a hoax. The cigar-shaped object visible in the footage corresponds to a known geological feature in or near the Isaac crater region on the lunar far side, which had been photographed during the actual Apollo 15 mission, and which is documented in the public Apollo imagery archive. The vessel is an elongated formation of natural origin, photographed under specific lighting conditions that give it an artificial appearance. The Apollo 20 mission did not occur. The actual Apollo program ended with Apollo 17 in December 1972. The Saturn V launch vehicles that would have been required for Apollo 18, 19, and 20 were repurposed or placed in museums, where they remain visible today. There is no possibility of a concealed launch of this magnitude. Apollo 20 is a hoax. This is established. I have now walked through three of the most famous claims of alien activity on the moon: the Blair Cuspids, the Zond 3 spire, and the Apollo 20 footage. Each is, on examination, not what its proponents claim. If this is where the video ended, it would be a debunking video, and you would be justified in feeling that the question had been dismissed rather than answered. The video does not end here, because there is one question we have not asked yet, and it is the question that actually matters. For most of human history, the far side of the moon was invisible. The moon is tidally locked to Earth, presenting the same face to us across the entire cycle of its orbit. Until 1959, when the Soviet Luna 3 spacecraft photographed it for the first time, no human eye had ever seen it. This created a natural reservoir for speculation. Whatever might be hidden on the moon, the reasoning went, would be hidden on the side we cannot see. That reservoir is now empty. The far side of the moon has been imaged, mapped, and surveyed by multiple independent space agencies across the past 2 decades. NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, launched in 2009, has produced surface imagery at resolutions reaching approximately 0.5 meters per pixel across nearly the entire lunar surface, including the far side. This means that any object larger than approximately 1 meter in characteristic dimension would be detectable in the imagery. China's Chang'e 4 mission landed on the far side in January 2019, the first soft landing in history on that hemisphere. Its companion rover, Yutu-2, has been operating on the surface for more than 6 years as of this recording. Chang'e 6, which returned far-side samples in 2024, provided additional high-resolution imaging of specific target regions. India's Chandrayaan-2 orbiter, the Japanese Selene mission, the European Space Agency's contribution through ESA-NASA partnerships, and ongoing observations from ground-based radar facilities have all contributed to the most complete cartographic and photographic survey of the lunar surface in history. The conclusion of all of this work is consistent. The far side of the moon, at the surface level, contains no artificial structures. This is established. It is not a matter of suppression. It is a matter of data, openly published by competing space agencies, independently verified across multiple platforms, available for anyone with an internet connection to examine. If alien bases existed on the lunar far side, on the surface, at scales larger than approximately 1 meter, we would have found them by now. So why are we still talking about this? Because the surface is not the whole moon. In 2009, the Japanese Selene mission photographed a deep, vertical pit in the Marius Hills region of the lunar surface. The pit was approximately 50 meters in diameter and descended into darkness below the resolution limit of the imagery. Subsequent observation by NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter confirmed the pit and identified similar features elsewhere on the lunar surface, including a large pit in the Mare Tranquillitatis region. In 2017, radar data from Japan's Kaguya mission, reanalyzed by an international team, indicated that the Marius Hills pit was connected to a substantially larger subsurface void, extending laterally for at least several kilometers and possibly much further. In 2024, a team at the University of Trento, working with data from NASA's Mini-RF radar instrument, confirmed the existence of a lava tube beneath the Mare Tranquillitatis pit. The confirmed tube is approximately 45 meters in width and extends underground for a distance that has not yet been fully mapped, but is estimated to be on the order of hundreds of meters at minimum, with the possibility of branching networks extending much further. This is the first instrumentally confirmed lava tube on the moon. It is not a hypothesis, it is a measured cavity in the lunar interior, large enough to contain a small town. Lava tubes form when flowing lava on a body with volcanic activity develops a hardened upper crust while liquid material continues to flow underneath. When the flow stops, the crust remains, leaving a hollow tube. On Earth, lava tubes form structures up to tens of meters in width and many kilometers in length. On the moon, due to the lower gravity, lava tubes can theoretically be much larger, potentially up to a kilometer or more in width, and can persist for billions of years without collapsing. The lunar lava tube system has been a subject of intense scientific interest because it represents the most plausible location for future human habitation on the moon. Inside a lava tube, future astronauts would be shielded from radiation, micrometeorites, and the thermal extremes of the lunar surface. Multiple space agencies are now developing missions specifically to explore these subsurface environments. NASA's Endurance mission concept, currently in development, is designed to deploy a rover capable of descending into a lunar pit and surveying the lava tube interior. The Chinese International Lunar Research Station, planned for construction in the 2030s in partnership with Russia and other nations, has identified lava tube habitation as a long-term objective. Within the next decade, for the first time in human history, a robotic explorer will enter the interior of a lunar lava tube and photograph what is inside. This is the genuine, unresolved question. The interior of the lunar lava tube system has never been observed. We do not know what is in it. The volume is large enough, the environment is stable enough, and the location is concealed enough that any hypothetical artificial structure, if one existed anywhere on the moon, would almost certainly be there rather than on the exposed surface. I want to be explicit about what this argument is and is not. The argument is that the lava tube interior is the only volume on the moon that has not been comprehensively surveyed, and it is also the volume where any hypothetical concealed structure would have to be located in order to have survived undetected. This is a statement about where the remaining uncertainty lives. The argument is not that anything is in the lava tubes. The existence of an optimal hiding place is not evidence that anything is hidden. This distinction matters. The genre's common failure mode is to confuse a logically possible location for evidence of an actual presence. We are not making that confusion. The lava tubes are unexplored. That is all we are saying. The contents of unexplored volumes are, by definition, unknown. There is also a piece of evidence that constrains what could plausibly be there. In 2012, NASA's GRAIL mission produced the most detailed gravitational map of the moon ever obtained. The data revealed the moon's interior structure with high precision, including mass distributions, density variations, and anomalies. The GRAIL data did not detect any large-scale concealed mass concentrations consistent with substantial artificial structures of the kind that would be required for, say, a major industrial facility or a large habitat complex. This means that whatever is in the lunar lava tubes, if anything, is constrained in scale. It cannot be a continent-spanning hidden city. It cannot be a vast subsurface complex of the kind sometimes imagined in the popular literature. The gravitational signature would have been detected. What it could still be, hypothetically, is something smaller, a facility on the scale of a small base, an installation that does not register as a mass anomaly because it is too small or too distributed. The GRAIL data narrows the question. It does not close it. This is where the genuine open question lives. Not on the famous photographs, not in the Apollo anecdotes, not on the far side surface. In a specific measurable volume of unexplored subsurface space, constrained in scale by the GRAIL gravity data and constrained in time frame by the upcoming missions that will explore it. That is the honest answer. Let me summarize what we have established. The famous photographic claims of artificial structures on the lunar surface have not survived examination. The Blair cuspids are natural boulders. The Zond 3 spire is a natural mountain peak. The Apollo 20 footage is a hoax. The most rigorous reanalyses available, using tools and data unavailable to the original claimants, produce consistent natural feature explanations. The famous anecdotal claims of Apollo-era extraterrestrial contact have not survived examination either. The Armstrong warning quote is a third-hand attribution that the primary subject denied for the remainder of his life. The transmission gap stories, when traced, dissolve into normal communications protocols and routine signal interruptions. The lunar surface, including the far side, has been comprehensively imaged by multiple competing space agencies at resolutions sufficient to detect any object larger than approximately 1 meter. No artificial structures have been found. The data is publicly available and independently verifiable. The lunar interior, as mapped by GRAIL, contains no concealed mass concentrations consistent with large-scale artificial structures. The interior is well characterized at the resolution available. The single remaining unsurveyed volume is the interior of the lunar lava tube system, recently confirmed by the University of Trento analysis in 2024. This volume is constrained in scale by the GRAIL data, meaning that any hypothetical artificial presence within it would have to be small enough to evade gravitational detection. It is currently unobserved, and it will be directly explored within approximately the next decade by the NASA Endurance mission concept and by Chinese International Lunar Research Station partner missions. These are the contemporary scientists and missions worth following on this question. Dr. Francesco Sauro at the University of Bologna has led much of the lava tube exploration concept development. Dr. Junichi Haruyama at JAXA has been central to the Marius Hills work. Dr. Wes Patterson at Johns Hopkins APL leads the mini RF radar analyses. The 2024 Treno paper with Lorenzo Bruzzone as principal investigator is the current state-of-the-art on confirmed lunar lava tubes. So the honest answer to the question of whether there are alien bases on the moon is this: there are no detectable alien bases on the lunar surface. There are no detectable alien bases of significant scale anywhere in the lunar interior that has been gravitationally mapped. There is one remaining volume where a small-scale concealed presence could theoretically persist undetected. That volume will be explored within the lifetime of most people watching this video. Anyone telling you the question is closed is overstating the evidence. The lava tube interior has not been observed. Anyone telling you the famous claims are valid is also overstating the evidence. The famous claims have been examined and have not survived. The actual position the data supports is that we have eliminated most of the search space, and we are within roughly a decade of eliminating the rest. That is a more interesting answer than either of the two failure modes I described at the beginning. There is a final question worth asking. If the famous claims do not survive examination, why have they persisted for more than 70 years? The lunar alien base story does not begin with Carl Wolf, or with the Blair Cuspids, or with the Apollo program. It begins earlier. In 1953, Major Donald Keyhoe published Flying Saucers from Outer Space, which included the first popular articulation of the lunar base hypothesis. The book argued that the moon was being used as a staging ground for extraterrestrial reconnaissance of Earth. The hypothesis predates almost all of the photographic and anecdotal evidence later cited to support it. The story exists not because the evidence demands it, but because the story is structurally compelling. The moon is visible to everyone. It is close enough to feel familiar and far enough to remain mysterious. It is the boundary of the explored world. Across human history, the boundaries of the explored world have always been where we have placed our imagined others. The persistence of the story is a fact about human psychology, not about lunar geology. This does not mean the people telling the story are foolish. Many of them, including Carl Wolf, were sincere. Some held credentials that gave their accounts weight. The accumulation of credentialed testimony, even when each individual account fails on examination, has a cumulative weight that is difficult to dismiss entirely. What the accumulation reflects, I think, is something true and important. It reflects that human beings, when confronted with the strangeness of the moon, with its silent presence in our sky for the entire history of our species, have always wanted there to be something there. The moon is the most imagined object in the human sky. We have placed gods there, monsters there, mere civilizations there, hollow interiors there, hidden bases there. The moon has absorbed our projections for as long as there have been minds to project them. What the next decade of lunar exploration will resolve is not just a scientific question about the contents of a lava tube. It will resolve, finally and for the first time, whether the most ancient human story about the moon has any basis in physical reality. The first robotic explorer is expected to enter a lunar lava tube before 2032. When it transmits its first image from inside that ancient cavity, we will know more about the moon than every human who has ever lived combined. Carl Wolf died in 2014, still maintaining that what he had seen in 1965 was real. He never produced the photograph. He never named the colleague. He held his confirmed cryptographic clearance through his Air Force service at Langley, and he carried his account with the same consistency for nearly 50 years. I do not know what Carl Wolf saw. Nobody alive does. What I know is that the question he raised is now narrower than it has ever been. The surface has been searched. The interior has been gravitationally mapped. The last unexplored volume is identified, located, and within reach of missions that are already being built. Before the end of this decade, a robotic explorer will descend into a lunar lava tube and turn on its lights. What it finds, or does not find, will be the most consequential answer to the oldest question we have ever asked about our nearest neighbor. We will not have to wonder much longer.